we are the game development club at the University of Dayton in Ohio. And we have done some projects like game jams and working on games in Unity. And right now we're working on building an arcade cabinet to
Yeah,
put in a common space at the university. So we've been having a lot of fun with that. Would you just be able to give us like a brief introduction on like who you are and your background?
absolutely. Yeah. I'm gonna go back to the uni days. I'm gonna start from there. In
Yeah.
my uni days, I used to run a game dev club, much like Brian actually. And I had a bunch of friends with me, like you guys. So this is a deja vu moment for me. And it's the reason I was like, let's do this yesterday when he reached out to me. And then I started, doing side projects with the Game Dev Club. I started to explore engines on GitHub. Started to take part in competitions like Imagine Cup. Maybe you know it. That's what took me to the States in the final stages as well. And long story short, after I finished the uni and I had built some sort of portfolio, a portfolio, whatever portfolio a student can build, right? I started applying to various studios, and that's when I got into Sony, and then Codemasters. Codemasters, we ship the Riley stuff, and later I went to AMD, which is less game centric, I would say, if that's the word, and more tech focused. And then I work with developers like Rocksteady and others like that to help them optimize stuff. And after that, I guess here I am having a call with you. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
So
it's a
right now are you I know your bio says working solo, but what do
Mm.
you do right now?
Right now, it was a period of self-reflection mostly. I do a lot of engine work, Spartan game engine, if you've seen it. That's not one of the main goals, though. I do it because I enjoy it. But I've been exploring various ideas about new projects, even more bigger projects. They're very early, some of them, others more developed. But I'm exploring opportunities, let's say, that might, maybe, just maybe, guys, allow me to maybe not do a 9 to 5 forever. We'll see. But I'm working on various stuff. Let's say that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna keep asking some questions that I've laid out, but everybody in the
Okay.
call, like, feel free to jump in if you guys have anything you want to ask or add to the conversation. But I mean, so just for everybody else in this call who might not be familiar with Spartan, you had mentioned Spartan as something that you're working on right now. Could you just give us a background on what Spartan is and how it started?
Yes, absolutely. So Spartan is something I started around 2015, 14, somewhere there. I was still at the uni, like you guys, but I was at the end of the uni. And I wanted to do something that would be a ticket into the industry. And I was like, what the heck can I build? What can I do? Because the degree is good, it's one thing, but I was like, how can I enhance or increase the probability of success? And then I was like, maybe I can build something that has high value to somebody else. That somebody else being a potential employer. Okay, so a game studio. And I was like, what has high value to them that I can build on my own? A game is not that because I'm not a musician, I'm not an artist, I'm very bad as an artist. So I'm like, what can I do that's just code? That can kind of get me there, though. I can provide something of value to them. And that was the engine. And that's how I started doing it. And I worked really hard on it for the first year. And then I put it on GitHub and I started applying on stuff. And I got a job and I kept working on it. And I would say the goal of the engine was, in the end, to get a job and also educate myself about all things graphics. Because you can learn stuff at work or the uni with stuff that can be very valuable. But in my experience, nothing beats the hands-on, like I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna do some cool stuff, guys. That's what I've seen so far. So that's how I started, Brian. That's the story with yeah.
Nice. Yeah, well, I mean, so it sounds like it did help you get a job, but
Yeah.
obviously you've kept on working on it in the meantime. So is that mostly like for fun and to learn new stuff, or do you have like a end goal in mind nowadays as you continue to work on it?
That's a great question, and I've been asking this myself. And initially it was, yeah, to have fun. and I just had fun. There was no real point in the beginning. After I accomplished everything we said, I was having fun and working on it. But then something beautiful happened, which I never predicted, and that was a community started to form in a Discord server, and I had a few hundred people inside, and I've even made friends from that, believe it or not. Uh, and so it definitely started to have some more meaning because of that. The social aspect, the networking, the meeting other cool humans from whatever they might be. It's just awesome, man. It has an awesome, like, it keeps you going, you know? It's some sort of motivational, I don't know how to say it. So now it has, I guess, extended to having this kind of meaning. Like it keeps me connected to the industry, to the people. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had
Yeah.
a question I was gonna ask later on, but it kind of fits right now. I was just curious, like, do you have anybody in the industry or people who have worked closely on Spartan that you want to shout out as like this is somebody cool, you should follow their work?
You mean contributors?
Hmm.
I don't have massive contributions yet, but I have quite a few cool people that did certain things. So there is a guy that integrated Screen Space Shadows from Days Gone. You remember the game with a motorcycle?
Hmm.
So that thing has Screen Space Shadows, and they released this tech for free. And one guy actually sat down and put it in Spartan. I think he also works for IO Interactive now, Hitman stuff. And
Oh,
there
nice.
are other more minor contributions. Sadly, I don't remember everything on top of my head. But for the most part, the engine has been, it doesn't have a lot of contributors yet. It's not like a lot of people yet. But it's getting there. Something is happening slowly, yes. Yeah.
Nice. As far as like your work experiences at Sony, AMD, and Codemasters, what do you think has been the most fun for you? Was there any job where you got to work on a project where you thought like I
Yeah.
could do this forever?
Yeah, yeah. I feel you. That's a great question, by the way, as well. And that I felt it immediately. It was a feeling. When it happened, I just knew that was the case. And that happened with Codemasters for some reason. For some reason. The people were amazing. They were the people that worked on Drive Club and other cool racing games like that. So the tech was second to none. And they were exactly like kindred spirits, I think is the word. They were like me, very close personality wise. And I think that's the key. When you meet people, Brian, that are very close, Brian, sorry, very close to you, then I don't know, it just works. And then you're like, I can do this forever. So I think the human factor is a big thing. And I felt that with Codemasters on Dirt 5. It was very obvious. So you'll know if it happens with any of you guys, you'll know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. What, so as you moved between jobs in different periods of your career, like what was the motivation for the transition? Like when you were working at
Mm.
AMD, like what made you say like, okay, I'm gonna move on to this next job?
Yeah. I don't really have a plan or a methodology to switch jobs or, anything like that. What I do is I just follow my heart. I do stuff that I like. And usually, somehow, something happens. So, say I was working with Codemasters, right? And then they had me work on a tool called AMD Compressionator, which is a tool to compress textures for the GPU. And that tool was made by AMD. It had a few bugs, so I reached out to AMD to help me solve the bugs and all that. And then somehow they checked my engine, and then they reached out to me and so on. So then they offered me a job. So a lot of this stuff, they seem to happen very organically because I don't have a plan and I just go with the flow. I just follow my heart. I do what I like. It has always happened organically for me. So at some point, you just meet somebody who's like, "Hey, I saw this, I like that. Let's work together." And if you like each other, yeah, you can feel it that it's possible. So that has been my approach, Ryan. Like zero tactics.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
does seem like stuff just kind of works out like that. It's funny.
exactly my point,
Yeah.
man. It does. So you have to have faith, I guess. That's the takeaway from this. Have faith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you created Spartan, this was a question originally from Tyler Tackett. What
hmm
was the inspiration for the name?
Mm. Initially, it wasn't called like that, by the way. It was called Directus 3D. And that was because I was using DirectX at the time, and somehow that seemed like a great idea. But then I was like, that's a very geeky name. I cannot market it, it means nothing. So I just changed it to something that uh, had more marketing value to it. So there is, again, no real inspiration or meaning behind it. I was like, what has value to it? And it kind of represents the engine. And Spartan, being Spartan means to be simple, lean, you know. And the engine is taking this approach. Like there is not a lot of baked lighting or anything like that. It's all real time. So it's very lean, very simple in that regard. And it's an architecture. So I was like, yeah, Spartan could fit it as a methodology, as an ideology. And also has more marketing value, as you can see. It's like, yeah, Spartan, I guess. But yeah, nothing special, I guess.
Nice.
Yeah.
So when it comes to working on projects like Spartan, but I guess this is applicable to work projects as well.
Yeah.
When you approach solving a really difficult problem, particularly a problem that might not have a lot of resources online
Mm.
or like textbook material, how do you
Yeah.
approach solving that problem?
That's also a very good question. Back in the day, and up until recently, actually, there was no AI or anything like that. So the approach was, and I don't know if it's the right approach, it's just what I did organically. I just thought about the problem. I tried to solve it on my own. I spent a lot of time. Sometimes, I banged my head on the wall for days trying to come up with solutions or fix bugs or stuff like that. And usually, when I fail up with everything, that's when I go to literature or documentation or other approaches, which might not be efficient, but usually I try to tackle things on my own as best as I understand. And then if I fail, I fall back to literature. And usually I can fix most problems if or implement most things. If I cannot do that, then I give up. I used to give up and just move on to something else. So you cannot always solve everything, I guess, but you can solve a lot of things if you have persistence. And also, I think that things are already changing. I don't know what you think about this, guys, but I think AI is changing the field a lot. So I've been using that lately when solving any kind of problem, mostly as a resource fetcher. Instead of Googling stuff, I have it, fetch to me a bunch of resources. And that's it pretty much. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought that up because that was a question I wanted to ask. Maybe I'll
Hmm.
pair it as two questions. One was, like, do you think there's any place for artificial intelligence, mainly speaking in the form of like neural networks in the gaming industry? And what about like generative AI? Some people take a very hard stance against like,
Yes,
do not generate textures, do not generate code.
it's true. It's a very hot topic, but I will try to answer it regardless. Because, like you said, many people are very against it. Um, but I don't approach it as I'm fully against it or I fully love it. I try to approach it in a more pragmatic way. And I think it already has some value when, at least for programming wise, it helps. I know artists hate it, but I'm pretty sure at some point it's going to be able to do pretty good art. So I do think that even if it's, I hope it doesn't replace everyone in the industry, okay? I don't want to make people mad. But I do think, man, that it is a great tool. Like, I would really be surprised if the industry never touches AI. Like, it doesn't make sense. They're going to use it. And the companies, you have to remember that all these big studios and all these big companies, they're money-making machines at the end of the day. So they're looking for ways to reduce cost. So if they can have a lot of brain power, but whether it's artificial or not, cheaper, they will go for it. It's all about optimization. So I think they will go for it, which will also boost its evolution and it will help back again the industry and so on. It's like a vicious circle, feedback loop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of feeds into another question I wanted to ask you is
That's
like,
awesome.
how do you think the game industry will change over the next 5 years or 10 years? And it doesn't necessarily have to be purely with respect to generative AI, but that could be
Yeah.
part of it.
Yeah, that's predicting the future is very difficult. But I think the first thing is I don't know if it's gonna change like that, but I hope it does change like that. And that's games have become super massive, and there is a lot of money involved and a lot of you know investors, and it's a big business at this point. And they kind of lost their soul a little bit. You see all these formulated games that come out every year and they're the same and so on. And this approach starts to not work. So I hope that in the coming years, things kind of get reorganized and the scope becomes small as well. This way, you have less redundancies. You also don't need hundreds of millions to make a game. That needs to come down as well a little bit. I hope everything becomes more like it used to be like 15 years ago. Uh, I don't know. I have no idea if it's going to happen. But I do think, the current model of AAA games is very unsustainable. And who pays for it, as you see, what you see is the people, the redundancies. So that's just not right, man. It has to be fixed. As for the AI, yeah, I think it's going to be part of it. Um, and for games, what I think is maybe now that AI is a thing, maybe we will start to see the first studios where they make big projects, but they're like 5 people, something like that, because the compute or the say the gray matter they have available now is cheaper and it can be artificial. So I think we might see the first studios that I'm gonna say it better. I think indie might be redefined. So the indie that we hear this word and we think about a small 2D game or something like that, I think that will change. So the indie of the future is gonna be something way more polished and way bigger because of AI as well. So as you see, it's not all bad. We're gonna have some cool stuff. And this again, Ryan, take it with a huge grain of salt because predicting the future is so difficult, man. Like I might be saying nonsense, but that's what I have in my mind right now when I think about all this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I mean, those are all really great points, right? Like I think about we're kind of having an indie renaissance right now, and it seems like it's largely due to indie games with like a very small amount of people working on it who have a very specific novel idea that they want to pursue
Bang on.
versus at the same time the industry is kind of like almost pushing out like AAA sequel unfinished like kind of not well received
Exactly.
half-baked experiences, and it seems like
Exactly.
maybe like people are gravitating towards these indie games because they're unique and fresh and they bring something new to the table. But as you said, like it does seem like they are a little bit limited in scope, right? Because they don't have the resources of a AAA company. But it would be really interesting to see, like, as the tooling gets more powerful and as they have more resources available to them, like what types of experiences and new ideas come into the indie scene. I think that'll be
I
really
think you
cool.
phrased it perfectly. Yeah. That's exactly, I think, what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah,
Let's see.
So,
do you mind if I ask a question?
yeah, go ahead.
Excuse my voice, but I think you made a lot of really cool points. And with your prediction with the future, what advice would you give us college students for
Mm.
what could we do to improve our chances of getting a job,
Yeah.
like you did when you
Yeah.
made your
Yeah.
Spartan engine and things like
Yeah.
that?
I feel you, man. And you know what? It pains me because I don't know the answer, to be honest. It's
Yeah.
Ryan is frozen, but I think it's we're still you can still listen to me, okay?
Yep, I can hear.
Cool, cool. Okay. So yeah, it pains me because I don't know the answer, and I've been thinking about this myself. I was like, young people now, how the heck do they go about it? I would say, you know what? I would say just follow your passion, make something cool, build something, like put stuff out there. Like the degree and all that is good, and all everything you do is amazing. So good job about everything you did. But I think it's also great to put stuff out there. That I think will never change. Something made by a human, something cool, will have value to other humans, I would assume. So I would think
Mhm.
that if you make an amazing game or a tool or an engine and you put it out there, that's definitely going to have some impact. I cannot imagine that it will cease to have meaning to other humans at any point. And the beauty with that as well, Daniel, is that when you put something out there, other people can see it, other humans from all over the world. Like Right now, if you make something locally and you show it to Ryan or your other friends, it exists within your circle. I don't know it exists. I don't even know you exist. So the fact, if you put something out there, that's a massive win. And I don't think AI can really take away from it too much. So I would suggest that you keep doing what you're doing and try to have a public approach to the work you do. And other humans would appreciate it. I hope it works. That's what I'm doing at least. Yeah.
No, that's super interesting because when you talked about creating a community around Spartan and
Yeah.
you started making friends, I was like, oh, how could I actually go about doing that?
Yeah, that's
And
awesome,
then
man. Yeah.
yeah, because with social media nowadays, there's so
Yeah.
many ways. But yeah, that's a really cool perspective that maybe I should start
Exactly,
looking
man.
into.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right about that. Yeah. There is also the community that all of that. Not just you put your work out,
Mhm.
but you meet very cool humans from all over the world that are
Yeah.
other like you with your interests. And some of them will actually be employers, people who will open doors for you.
Mhm.
That's it, man. I truly believe that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah, it's awesome. Yeah.
So I have a question maybe to kind of build on that.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard, right, for some people to put themselves out there, like put something that they've made out there and be like, I made this and like receive like maybe positive praise, but also criticism. And it's kind
Yes.
of difficult for some people to like share what is like truly theirs. And it reminds me a little bit of pretty recently when people on Twitter were talking
Wow.
bad about Spartan because of the
Ah.
GPU support. So
Yes.
I kind of have like a tiered question,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
how do you approach like putting yourself out there, staying true
Yeah.
to yourself, and also dealing with maybe like criticism or backlash?
Mm, mm. At the beginning, what's a polite expression? I was very, very afraid, okay, let's say that. Very scared of doing anything public. That goes all the way back to the uni, Ryan. Like even the talks I did or any calls, like what you're doing now, even that made me nervous in the beginning. But that went away eventually, as you can see. You get used to in the university context, a smaller social circle, you get used to that. But the fully public level, which is what you mentioned, being on X or recording a video or the FSR2 live stream I did or the Spartan backlash, that's the full-on, fully public, and that's very scary in the beginning. And I'm still not comfortable. I'm not like, I haven't solved everything, guys. Like many times I record a video or I do a live stream. And you know what? Everything I did online on YouTube, I never watched them. I hate watching myself. I don't like it. I don't feel comfortable, but I still do it. So that's one thing I do. Many things I don't like or I feel uncomfortable, but I understand that that's how it is and I just go with it. Now, as for the backlash with X, say the 1080 Ti, for example, situation, which was to explain what happened, guys. I have a warning window that shows up in my engine when you have a 1080 Ti or lower GPUs, and it doesn't prevent you from running the engine. What it says is that the engine is using more advanced features. So maybe not everything works as expected, or maybe the performance is not as great, blah, blah, blah. But you click OK, it's a warning, and it continues. But the internet never picked up on that. And they thought that I was like saying, no, you're not going to run the engine because you have a 1080 Ti. And also, I think that they thought that, I don't know, the engine is used for Battlefield or something. Like, I don't know why it matters so much to them. Anyway, and as you can see, that was I was faulted in that, and it was the way to fix it. I tried to reason with many people. It was impossible, and I did. It did get to me. I felt frustrated, and I felt like I had a weight on me. I don't know. It felt depressing with the situation. But then I got over that as well. And now my approach, again, I haven't solved everything. I'm solving it as I go. Now my approach, guys, is um, I just have to ignore some things. And you know what? Maybe some criticism is wrong, and maybe some is right. But I'm human. And the reason I'm more public now, I just put myself out there, is not because I think I'm perfect, but because I know my heart is in the right place. So I'm like, that's who I am. And yeah, let's go on with it. And whatever happens, happens. And I think that's what you should do, guys. Like, just be yourselves, do your job, do whatever you want to present out there. And don't worry about all this stuff. Otherwise, you'll go nuts. There is no fixing. There is no dealing with this. You have to ignore it, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great, by the way, Ryan.
thanks. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I feel like there's always this balance, right,
Yeah.
in taking criticism and sometimes acknowledging criticism that isn't
Yes.
valid. But I
Yes.
see a lot of people like, um, they get criticism and then they almost like double down and they're like, everybody else is wrong and I'm right. I can never be wrong about
Oh, yeah, yeah,
anything.
yeah.
And it
Yeah.
leads to this weird like ego thing. So it
Yes.
is very difficult, like you acknowledge, like to take some parts of the criticism, like
Mm.
maybe in this instance, when people were not happy with the Spartan warning and be like,
Yeah.
okay, why do they feel this way? You know,
Yes.
like, is there anything I should do differently on my part? But also taking the unreasonable complaints that are like, nobody would ever use this engine, all this other stuff, and filtering that out. So I think
Yeah.
there's like an interesting,
Yeah.
interesting nuance to sorting that out.
Exactly. It's a learning experience, then for sure. You learn, you can grow from it. You can see it this way. You grow from it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're
Kind
bang on.
of, I'm kind of curious, like,
Yeah.
I am someone who has worked on recently a pretty long-term project. I've been working on my own engine for like 2 years, but this is applicable to basically any long-term project. I'm
Mhm.
curious, like,
Mhm.
how do you go about staying motivated and
Mhm.
consistent when working on long-term projects? I kind of find that on my engine, I have to pick one thing, like work
Yeah.
on the renderer, and then
Yeah.
sometimes I'll get bored with it and then I can jump to something else. And it's almost like a natural transition. But there are some days where I'm like, I don't want to do anything.
Yeah, no, totally. I get you. I feel you. And I feel like that many times. Like sometimes I don't want to deal with the engine at all. And I might not touch it for months. And that has happened many times. And but somehow I keep coming back to it, right? So then I'm like, okay, what does it? And I've thought about it many times because I don't have the full answer yet. I'm still exploring this. Like why this is happening. And I have realized two possible factors that might be responsible. I have thought about two possible factors. And the first is I do go with the flow. I do what I like, which is really important. So if I feel like working on terrain or vegetation, I'll just do that. But also, I try as much as possible to align this with some sort of give it some sort of meaning. Like, I don't know, I'm gonna do this rendering stuff, some GI stuff, to then apply to these guys because they will appreciate it or whatever. So I try to align my passion with something that has a practical, it's viable, practically somehow. It's not always possible, but if you can merge, if you can put these two together, usually you get more motivation. But also, the second factor, I think it might be into play here. It must be something with how every person is wired. Like for me, I have difficulty not doing stuff sometimes. When I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like, do I have ADHD or something, or what is it? Because there are moments where I cannot rest. I cannot like, I don't know, go on holidays for a month and do nothing. I'll go nuts. I'm wired in a way where I have to always, I don't know, read books or do the engine. Like it's like your brain wants to work, so you have to give it something. And that fault or gift, call it whatever you want. I think it's one of the major factors that keeps me like that. So wiring, I guess, is a thing, but it doesn't mean that you need to have that. There are many factors, and I don't even know them all yet. I'm still wondering about this, but I think for most people it will be do what you like, what you're passionate about, because that means you'll stick with it for longer and spend more quality time with it. And if possible, try to combine that with, some practical goal. Make this matter somehow more practically, if possible. I think that applies to everyone here. Yeah.
Yeah. They say like do what you love and you never work a day in your life, which I think is true.
Yeah. You get it. Yeah.
But also like if you figure out what the predisposition is, you need to let me know because I have the same thing where like if I have to take a day off, like because I literally cannot work on
Yeah.
something, like I spend the whole day thinking about it
Yes.
and it
I get
kills
you
me.
exactly, man. I think a lot of people in our industry might be similarly like we have this kind of wiring. I don't know what it is, but if I figure it out, yeah, I'll tell you, man. You'll be the
Yeah.
first to
So
Yeah,
I think this might be a good chance to ask kind of these two questions that I had on the back
sure.
burner because we've kind of talked a little bit about like more almost like meta philosophical stuff. Like I'm
Yeah,
curious, like what is a piece of advice that you would give to us as computer science undergraduates? And then what is another piece of advice you would give to us as just like people in their early 20s?
yeah. Great question. I can definitely answer the first one. The first one is something I would give to myself as well. And it's also an opinion I have. It might not be the absolute universal truth, but I would say that everything you do, especially the scripted stuff that they tell us from when we're young, go to school, get us a degree, get a certificate, blah blah. That's all good. That's amazing. But you have to remember, in the context of being great at what you do, or having a career of some sorts, or whatever it is your goal, in that context, degrees and titles and medals and recognitions of any kind are an indication that you can do the job. What I mean by that, what is proof that you can do the job? That's the job itself. Imagine that I'm making cars. I'm a company that makes cars. You can give me a CV that is amazing and it has a bunch of awesome unis and I don't know what else. And I'm gonna be like, okay, he studied about making cars and all that. He can very likely, it's very likely that he can make a car. And then I have another guy who has exactly the same CV, but also he built I don't know, a Ferrari in his backyard. That's next level. That means that this guy, that's the proof of the job. It's not an indication. It doesn't take away anything from the indication from having the CV, but it adds to it. So that's proof. So when I see that, then I know that this guy can hit the ground running. This guy can make the car. It's not a question of, very likely he can make it. He will make it. So I think it's very important to realize this because for some reason, and I've seen this when interviewing people, when I worked with various employers in the past, I have some amazingly smart people, awesome characters, awesome CVs, amazing credentials. And what saddens me is very few have a GitHub project or just, build something. But some do. The ones that do, in my experience, they always come for an interview or whatever. So I think there is value in that, guys. And not many people understand this for some reason, and it's nothing special. I think it's because sometimes we're preoccupied with following the script and doing everything we have to do that we forget to think about simple stuff like that. But if you do that, it will take you places for sure. Just also have the indication that you can do something, but also the proof. Now, the second question was, Ryan, if uh, like you're in your early 20s, what advice I would give to you in general?
Yep.
Uh, like a more social approach, I guess, a more, hmm, you know what? I would say focus on yourself. So don't be afraid to be egotistical in a good way. Like you're very young and you have the time to have relationships, get married, whatever. You can do all of that. You're very young. So I would say now is the time where you have the energy and the youth to focus on yourself. So I would say be egotistical in a good way. Focus on you. It's now or never if you're serious about this. And years fly by super fast. Like yesterday, I was in the position of Ryan, and today I'm 33. You know what I mean? It's like just move fast, guys. Just it now. That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I want to kind of ask some more questions related to like pop culture and like what kind of inspires you, because
Yeah.
I've noticed kind of a big part of cultivating a mindset where I'm inspired to work on stuff like all the time and I have all these ideas. It's kind of like a holistic thing of like like read cool books, like watch cool movies, follow cool people on social
Yeah. Yeah.
media.
Yeah.
I'm curious like what kind of factors play into your
Hmm.
kind of inspiration and like what type of content do you consume?
That's very accurate. Very accurate question. It's very bang on. And you know what? It's very important, by the way, to have influences, cultural influences from beyond coding or games, whatever. You can be a person of I mean, I'm doing coding and all that, right? But also, I admire people like Arnold, if you remember him, 80s star, right? Why? Because of course I like movies like The Terminator and all that, but also he is a guy with an insane hard-working mindset. He came in the US as an immigrant, worked really hard, blah blah blah. He couldn't even speak properly. He wanted to be a movie star. So I have nothing to do with bodybuilding and all that, obviously, right? But that's why this question is awesome. You can draw influence from everywhere, and from that I admire the mentality, the persistence, perseverance, and the fact that you can make it no matter what. So I draw from movies, specifically, Arnold or what else? Uh, Games. It's a ton of stuff actually. From people online, of course, talking to you or talking with other friends or industry people. I also consume a lot of podcasts. Lex Friedman, Joe Rogan. I consume a lot of stuff. Yeah. But yeah, it's very difficult now to give you specific examples like I did with Arnold. Like from this podcast, I like this and I took this, or from this, that's a little bit difficult to come up with.
Yeah.
But I consume a ton of stuff, man. I'm almost always online to the extent that maybe I should cool it a little bit.
What about like games? Do you play a lot of games nowadays? Because I've noticed that like as I've gotten older,
Oh yeah.
relatively, I've stopped playing as much games and I've wondered like as I continue to get older,
Yes. Yeah, I don't know why, man. I feel you though. And I do still play them, but now, like when I play them, I also take pride in playing them, if that makes sense. Because it's true that the novelty wears off. You have seen a lot of stuff. Happens with music, with films, with games. The novelty wears off. And then it takes way more to get you invested, emotionally invested, or enjoy a game and so on. Plus, as we said before, the industry has changed a little bit. So you don't even get such good games anymore. But yeah, recently, like I have installed Stalker 2 on my computer and with a pools, a liminal space game and some stuff like that. But it really, it might take me 6 months to finish one of them. So I am slow. I'm nothing like I used to be. But I still try to play games. But it's very much now a conscious effort. It's basically me trying to prove to myself that the inner child is not dead, that I'm still here and I'm playing games. You know what I mean? But I'm not gonna lie to you. What you feel is real, and I feel it as well. You kind of, I don't know, some of the magic goes away, man. That's the truth. Yeah.
yeah, that's life. I
Yeah,
appreciate you keeping it real.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, okay, so earlier when we talked, you sent
Mhm.
me, I think it was like a Greek metal band, but I'm curious, like, what type of
Yeah.
music do you listen to, and what type of music do you listen to when you're programming, if at
Yes.
all?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I do listen to music very often. Actually, yeah, I'm one of these guys that I cannot code in silence. I have to listen to stuff, podcasts or music. The band I sent you, Thousand Mods, one of the best Greek bands, by the way. You should look it up, guys. You're welcome. Now, I listen to music a lot, and it's usually pretty heavy stuff as well. So it might be Thousand Mods, it might be Rammstein, stuff like that. And many other times, I go to the other end completely. So I might listen to instrumental, like video game soundtracks. So I like Mirror's Edge a lot. I don't know, it's very melodic. Or Alan Wake. So I oscillate between the extremes of heavy metal and rock and full instrumental calm stuff, like a madman, like a proper madman. But yeah, I never called in silence. What about you, Ryan? Do you call in silence or
I don't. I've noticed like the same
yeah,
thing that you talk about, where like when you listen to music while you're programming, the vibe is it's very it's
yeah,
very different depending on what you're working on. So sometimes I do listen to like stuff like you mentioned,
yeah,
I think it was the Mirror's Edge OST, like video game music where it's just kind of like instrumental and chill versus like sometimes
exactly.
I'll
Yeah.
listen to like metal or like rap and stuff like that. Um but yeah,
I feel you. Yeah, I'm the same.
yeah, I
Yes.
sent um
That's funny. Sorry, it reminds me of that me of the meme where like you listen to music and then oh really hard problem comes on, turn the music off, super focused.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the same way.
Yeah. I think all of us, Daniel, I think most of us, as you see here,
Yeah.
if we're being honest, you see, we're very similar. This kind of, tech and video games. It's a very specific way. It's very specific DNA of,
Hmm.
know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
So I had a few questions for you about game
absolutely.
engines
Yeah.
generally. I've seen a lot of discourse recently on out of the box game engines, particularly Unreal Engine 5, where there's a subset of people who are like, this is the greatest tool ever. And there's another subset of people where they're like, they are not focusing enough on optimization or like developer experience and other things like that. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, like, what do you think of the current landscape of game engines? Also considering that Unity just did the licensing change where they rolled it back.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, yeah. Wow, that was wild. Uh, yeah. So, uh, if I understand your question correctly, there are very polarizing. Like there are aspects in game engines that are very polarizing these days, and I think very common. If you would go for Unreal, many people complain that it's a stutterfest. PSO casting is a problem, compiling PSO states, shaders, and all that. And I think both sides are right. And the people that love Unreal and are very, you know, tech forward and adopt all the early stuff, despite being a little bit janky if something is very new. And the people that complain are correct. So I think both are correct. What happens is some let's take for example PSO casting. All right, you can't get it to work correctly even with Unreal. You have to uh, uh, catch all the PSO states, compile them in the beginning. This pre-compilation that happens in most games. You can do all that. If you do all that correctly, your game will work. So Unreal will not be a starterfest. But the thing is, it's very involved, and many developers don't do it. And the reality is that the logistics of game development, especially AAA game development, are that you have a ton of fires to put out, and you're shipping in next week, and the game doesn't render on PS5 at all, or it crashes. So you have serious problems. And the last thing you care about, especially your bosses who don't understand about tech, is getting the PSO casting correctly. So that's the problem. It's a logistical problem. So it's not 100% the fault of the engines. Well, in this case, PSO casting. It's just that it can be fixed, but also it's not convenient. Like the engine should have found a way to prevent that from happening. So I think everybody is correct, and everybody is a little bit wrong at the same time. We definitely need a fresh take on APIs and engines and all that, like PSO casting and all this stuff. Yeah, it is a thing. Polarizing opinions.
Yeah. What do you think about how custom engines fit into the scene, particularly like with AAA? And maybe I'll just give a few examples.
Yeah,
Um, I think I have seen both good and bad transitions from studios going from an in-house engine to something like
yeah.
Unreal Engine 5, um,
Hmm.
or just UE in general. Like Persona 5 was, I think, a proprietary in-house engine. And then when
Yeah,
they released Persona 3 Reload, they switched to Unreal Engine 4. And that game was very well optimized, very well received. But I see a lot of people online who say, like, there's no reason to ever write a custom engine. You should always use out of the box, especially as a big studio. Do you
yeah.
think that, like, in-house engine development is kind of going to continue to be phased out and become kind of like a lost art, or do you think there will always be a place for it?
I think it will continue to exist, but its frequency might be lower. So it might not be as common. Not because there is something wrong with it. In fact, it's awesome, and it's where innovation happens, and it's what I'm into as well. But the reality is that the logistics of game development dictate choices somehow, and they're not personal choice. Sometimes you cannot decide. I cannot just say I'm gonna like if I'm working on an idea or a video game with a couple of friends, like we're, I don't know, three dudes. We don't have the manpower to build an engine and at the same time build a game and ship it before in less than a year. So the logistics, like the reality itself dictates to you that you need some tools to be ready. Of course, there are cases where the logistics allow You have the manpower, you have the budget, you have an awesome studio, whatever, and you can go all in and you can make crazy tech. And that's awesome. And that will continue to exist. But as you understand, I think the logistics most of the time would be people just want an engine. They want a tool to make the game. But we'll still have, I think, not I think, we will have always custom engines. But the frequency will be lower. It's already low, as you can see. Unreal is almost always the engine. So this trend will continue, but it will crystallize at some point. Like they will be used. They will not go completely. It will not be a thing of the past. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think, I guess kind of going back to what I mentioned with Unity introducing the runtime fee and then rolling it back, we saw a lot of developers, especially like in the indie scene, be like, well, I'm not going to use Unity anymore, even though they rolled it back. I'm going to switch to Godot. Do you think that Godot will grow to have a larger market share?
I hope. I like the idea of not having a monopoly because then the company can do whatever they want. You just mentioned the licensing thing. So when you have monopolies, there is the problem that they can do whatever they want and your hands are tied. But if you have options, that makes them second guess certain actions like that. So I think because of that, Godot has a future, and I do hope that more people use Godot or other open source engines I might not be familiar with. But I think they do have a future, definitely. And I hope it stays that way. I don't want to have, not that there's anything wrong with Unity inherently, you know what I mean, or something wrong with Unreal inherently, but I don't want them to be the only option. So I think most people will agree with that. And because of that, we will have always some options. They're not enough now, in my opinion, by the way. We need more options. Um, it can game ready, like production ready options, not just experimental stuff like my engine. Uh, yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I think I have one more pretty solid question.
yeah,
And then after
oh,
that, I think I'm going to open the floor to everybody else because I think I've exhausted myself with questions.
cool,
But
cool.
so one thing that I'm curious about, particularly with your Spartan engine,
Mm,
is how has it evolved over time? Because I've noticed that it seems like when you do a custom engine, it's a
yeah,
never-ending project. Because when I started mine, it
yeah,
wasn't even an engine, it was like a visual novel game. And then I just kept adding more generic things to it.
exactly.
And I
Yeah,
kept rewriting stuff that I had already done. And
yeah,
then it's kind of like now I have a never-ending to-do list of stuff. So I'm
yes.
curious, like, did the same thing happen with Spartan, and how has it changed over time?
Yeah, so you're very correct when you say it's a never-ending project. It's like a rabbit hole. You can keep going and it will keep giving to you things to do. And the way it has developed is, again, as you can imagine, zero tactics or approaches, very organically. And that, I say that in many ways, like the way architect thinks since. Like initially, straight out of the uni, I was using inheritance and objects everywhere. And I was going full on everything I learned, I was using it there. And then organically, after working with amazing people in the industry, I came back and I didn't start a new engine. I started changing parts of it. So I started to use static classes, less objects. If something doesn't need an instance, I don't make it a class. I started changing my naming conventions. I started changing, I added the second API, Vulkan. So everything from naming stuff to how I build my classes to what APIs I use, everything was unplanned and it happened organically. It has always been the case. In the beginning, it was more difficult, more chaotic because I was more of a noob back then, from APIs, from languages and all that when I was first starting. But nowadays, if you get into a flow state in the zone where you can just go with it, work organically, and it just works. It works if you're one guy or a small team. I guess you have logistical problems of working organically if you have a big team. That's when it starts to be a problem. But organically for me, Ryan, it's the way to go. Yeah,
Yeah. One more follow-up that I just thought of,
yeah,
and
of
then
course.
we'll open
Uh,
it. As far as like programming languages in game and game engine development,
yeah,
the standard right now is C++, plus plus. But
yeah.
I'm sure you know that Jonathan Blow has been working on the Jai language
Yeah,
and an in-house engine on that. And also I've seen lately like people doing game dev with Rust, with
yeah,
like Bevy or like Raylib plugin integrations. Like,
yeah.
do you think that as an industry, we will see a shift over to like a different language in the future? Or do you think C++ is just going to be the standard for another couple decades?
Yeah. Um, this is a, I'm not sure I can answer this because I've heard, first of all, I've only been using C++ for ages. That's one thing. The second is I'm aware of some up and coming languages, or maybe they have been here for a while, like Rust. Many people have said very good things about Rust. The problem is I never used it. So I'm not sure about what's happening there. But what I can tell you, having been in the industry for a while, every huge code base and engine I test, especially the custom ones, it's C++ through and through. So I'm pretty sure that I mean it's so deep everywhere, it's rooted deeply everywhere that it's going to be around for a while. Even if something changes, it's not going away soon because it's everywhere already. So it's going to take some time to transition. However, that's the thing. I don't even know if it's is there another language that's more capable? I'm not sure. Maybe Rust can do it, maybe not. The truth is, I don't have the knowledge there to answer this because I never used it. So I'm a noob in this area, guys. What do you think, Ryan?
Oh, I don't know. I think it will take a long time for anything other than C++ to be like the mainstream standard. I mean, we still see like cool games
Yeah,
built on like any language, any tech, like Vampire Survivors was just like JavaScript, like it was an
really?
Electron game. I think they
Yeah,
used some JavaScript framework, but
really? Huh.
yeah, there's like a game dev JavaScript framework that I can't remember the name of. Let me look it up.
Well, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, I think it'll take a long time for
Hmm.
C++ to go away.
I think so. I think so. Yeah, it's everywhere. It's everywhere, man. Everywhere I look through, it's C++.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Vampire Survivors was built on Phaser, which is a
Hey,
JavaScript
oh,
framework.
first time I hear about it.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think that that was all the questions that I had.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna open it up to the room for
Yeah.
anybody else in the club to ask a question, or even you, Panos, if you have questions for us or anything you
I
want to
have a
talk about.
question.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yep.
Yeah. So actually, I agree too. I thought that was like companies aren't gonna switch.
Yep.
Sorry. But although you can't say much on languages, working at Sony or AMD, are there any other like technologies that you're like, I use this on a daily basis. If all of us were to learn this specific technology, it would be super beneficial for our future. Or like, so or like you see like a trend in Unreal
Mm.
Engine. We should all learn Unreal Engine,
Yeah.
or or maybe it's just we should all just learn C++ or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah. First of all, I have to say what that is mainly dictated by what path you choose to follow. Like, what's your future
Mm.
employer or what you want to do. I'm assuming
Yeah.
it's development, of course. I hope it's awesome.
Uh,
If that's the case,
listen.
I can tell you that, like we said before, C++ is definitely one thing that's not going away anytime soon. And you know what? I've been in industry for a while, and apart from C++, I use HLSL to write shaders. So some trigonometry there and some linear algebra. So
Hmm.
math is always useful. It's universal,
Hmm.
transcends languages and everything. So that's also a good thing to know. It will help you a lot. Now, in terms of tools, in this industry, it's good to know profiling and debugging tools. Say things like RenderDoc. Maybe you've heard about RenderDoc or
Hmm.
you. These are tools that when your app launches, it hijacks the executable and it goes, say, to the Vulkan or DirectX calls, and it wraps them. So when your API, your engine calls DirectX functions, it thinks it's talking to DirectX, but it's really RenderDoc or whatever tool you have capturing these calls, recording everything, and then doing the actual call. And these tools are used everywhere. We use them in AMD, they use them in at NVIDIA,
Hmm.
they have their own tools as well, and are great for having a capture, a snapshot of the GPU and its pipeline at a given frame. And then you can see, you can track a pixel which is black or it's glitching and find out what went wrong in the pipeline. It got rasterized wrong or whatever. You can see pipeline patterns, performance stuff related. So this is very valuable as well. And I think if you go in game development and you don't do gameplay, I mean, even with gameplay it might be useful. But it's
Mhm.
going to come at you for sure. Like at some point, you're going to have to use NVIDIA Insight, random GPU profiler, RenderDoc, or something of that nature. And
Mhm.
I think that's a good thing. You don't have a lot more stuff. Like I've been doing HLSL, mathematics, C++, and these tools, and I've been good for all these years. Uh,
Mhm.
so maybe there are more, but I can tell you that this will definitely get you somewhere. Yeah,
Uh, That's really cool.
yeah,
I'll have to uh
yeah,
yeah, that was a lot of tools. But yeah, I imagine you learned a lot of those on the job. Or
yes.
did you yeah, yeah. Because um
Uh-huh.
when I had an internship and I actually did C++ at that internship, and
Yeah,
I didn't know any C++. I didn't know anything.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
like I don't know if it's similar to you when you went to like Sony or AMD. It's like, oh, I made my engine, and it's like, oh,
yeah.
there's like this huge other part that I never even seen before.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah,
like how
yeah. Sorry,
how
go on.
does how do you adapt to situations like that? So like
Yes.
uh,
You know what? And that's a very good question, by the way, Daniel. And I built the engine and all that. I was very active with everything
mhm.
related. And when I went to Sony, I was hitting my pants, I'm being honest. It was a ton of stuff. It was a ton of stuff. I had no idea.
Mhm.
About. And I was like, oh man, I don't know about this. I don't know about this. And
Yeah.
a lot of things, you figure them on the job. And also, the correct team, a correct manager, they know that they are already more mature. They've been there as well. So a proper manager, especially for a younger person, they already expect this. They expect you to get lost,
Mm.
but they will help you. They will act as an umbrella and they will protect you
Mm.
from everything in the company. They will educate you and help you become who you can truly become. And that's how it happens for all of us. If you don't get that, then you're working with the wrong people. But
Mm.
a good manager already expects that. They've been there. We've all been there. I've been there. I've been a noob many times. I'm still a noob even to this day. But a
Mhm.
good team will make this not be a problem for you. But of course, anything you learn, okay, it's in your favor. It will make you even more ready. But don't worry about learning everything because you can't. Nobody can. They will never be fully ready. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really cool. Yeah. Yeah, so really the people around you. Yeah.
Yes.
Because I can imagine working at Sony and AMD, you enjoyed your time there due to the culture and the people around you. Because I've always heard to like not make to make sure not to work in a toxic environment
Yes.
and
Oh, that's very
things like
important. I
that.
know. Yes. That's very important.
And
Let's talk about this because that can make you break you actually, these guys. You can chase money and titles and all that. And if you ignore the fact that the team might be toxic, it happens. It's the truth.
Mhm.
Talk about this. It can destroy you. I mean, you can get depressed in no time. You will not even realize that. So be really careful about this. And yes, the most valuable thing for me when I approach everything organically, I don't care so much. I mean, of course, the salary or the title is a factor, but it's not the primary factor. The first thing, Daniel, the most important, at least for me, that's why I'm still
Mhm.
saying after these years in the industry, what I think I'm saying is I look at people a lot and if we can work together and they're positive, they're not toxic. Because you have to remember that these people, after your family, are they come next. Like you will spend a lot of hours with them as if they're family, at least 8. So it's very important. It's very important that you vibe together. Otherwise, you're cooked, man. But don't worry
Mhm.
about it. Just be aware of it. And don't ignore your gut feeling. If something tells you that doesn't feel right, then most likely you're correct. Then you should avoid that.
Mhm.
Yeah, of
And so I guess I have one more question that kind of
course.
combines with that. So uh, I imagine you've worked with a lot of people now.
Yeah.
What type of people, or at least maybe a characteristic that you like working with? Maybe someone who
Ah,
communicates a lot, or like, because you mentioned having a
Yeah.
really good manager, but like what type of manager would you say is extraordinarily good? I mean, of course, a lot of this comes down to luck, just,
Yes. Yes.
kidding.
Yes.
But
The great question, Daniel.
uh,
I'll tell you. A great manager, his focus is good. So he doesn't care about his boss and how he will look good with his boss. His
mhm,
goal is how, say, Daniel will self-actualize. How will Daniel, what I mean by that, become
mhm,
who he can truly become? And that's unique to you. So his job is to protect you, be an umbrella with everything that's happening in the company,
yeah.
teach what you don't know, and make sure to get the best out of you, which is unique to you. So a great manager, it will be very obvious that you are his priority. And sadly, it's more rare, but they're out there. There are people out there that are that perceptive.
Mhm.
They know exactly what to do with you, and they will help you. A bad manager will be very
It's really cool.
they will care about their bosses and how they look to their bosses, and then you will feel it that you come later in their mind, even though they should be the ones leading you. You will feel
Mm.
it when which
Okay, yeah, that's really cool, man.
yeah
Yeah, with my inexperience of
yeah no worries
not working very much, yeah,
yeah
that's really cool insight. Thank
yeah
you.
no worries, man, my pleasure.
But I'll let somebody else ask a question now.
No worries, no worries, no worries, man. It's a pleasure, honestly, guys, because I've been where you are with the game dev club. So it's like a deja vu moment for me. So it's genuinely a pleasure. Ask anything you want.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
Um, I kind of had a question a little bit.
Yeah,
Mainly for like getting into game development, because that's kind of for me my
yeah,
ultimate goal, and that's what I want to get into.
yeah.
What would you say are like things that I should be working towards or doing even now to my best ability to get into that field
Yes.
specifically?
I think a great thing, and if you remember, we mentioned it earlier, but more briefly. But a great thing is, first of all, a great sign that I see in all of you. So good job about that. You do some work, like you do this meeting or whatever you do, the whole club thing, which is outside of what you have to do. So that passion, that pursuit of something more, that's the right path. This is you're doing it right. But you can take it further. That's what you're asking. And the further is it could be, and that mainly is dictated by you because it's what about what you like, but it could be a video game or an engine or a tool. And ideally, put it online, put it on GitHub, because then somebody knows that Wyatt exists and he's
Right.
doing this. And this guy might be, I don't know, might be from another continent, man. But it's really important. So if you do that, just put your passion in something and put it out there. Uh, that something is definitely going to come out of it. Now, the thing is very difficult to predict the future, almost impossible. But what I can tell you is that that's all I did when I was at your age. I just followed my heart. I did stuff that was fun. I was hanging around in the game dev club with my friends, like you're doing now, and pursued my interests and worked on projects and put them out there. And believe it or not, man, it happens. It might take a while sometimes. It might seem impossible. But if you persist enough, working on a game or whatever you decide to do, you know best. I cannot tell you that. If you keep at it, you will win in the end. Yeah. And
Okay.
I think you can do it, guys, all of you, because that's how I started as well. So you got it. Just keep doing what you're doing and keep being curious about everything. Yeah.
Kind of follow-up question is
Yeah.
like when you were getting into like looking for a job or whatever and stuff, did you
Yeah.
do a lot of networking, like either like cold calls or like cold emails or whatever to certain companies or hiring managers and stuff like that?
Uh, good question. The only thing I did was the typical stuff. So I would go to studios that I liked. Again, I just worked organically. I just follow my passion. I was like, who do I like? Remedy Entertainment, Max Payne, Alan Wake, and all that. Sony, blah blah. And I went to the sites and I went to the careers tab and I just found something that I liked and I submitted my CV and I applied. So that's all I did. I didn't call anyone or anything like that. I was just sending emails or applying within the forms if it wasn't an email from the forms or from the website. And when you have something, like I told you, a project besides your academic credentials, if you have a project as well, man, usually they answer. They're curious because it is amazing. It's cool. Even if they're just curious, you will get an answer usually. And that's when you realize, holy shit, it works. Like you can do stuff in life and life answers back. It's not like there for you to live in it. You can save it if you start
Right.
thinking this way. So that's all I did. Applied in these damn forms. It sounds simple, but it starts from there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. I had just the reason why I asked that is because there was so many
Uh-huh.
stuff I'd seen online that like people were like, "Oh, you got to network, do this and this and this," and
Ah,
I was just curious what your thoughts on that was. That's why.
you know what? Also, there is value to everything, I guess, to an extent. Maybe these people are right. I don't know. There is value
Right.
to everything. But what I can tell you is I did this. What I'm telling you,
Right.
I did this and it worked. So I can
Right.
promise you that this has some value. I don't know how much, but I think it's enough. But yeah, it's definitely keep it in mind. Keep
Yeah.
it in mind, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Anybody else have any other questions?
That's it.
Might be it.
Cool.
Well, yeah, thank you so much, seriously,
Oh,
Panos,
thank you
for
guys.
meeting with us. I am very grateful. We are very grateful of your time. I
I'm
think I
grateful.
speak for everybody when I say that this was awesome. Like, I think that particularly you and I might be like brothers from another mother. Like,
Yes, we're very close
I
now.
see a lot of myself in you,
Yes.
and particularly
Likewise.
the way that you talk about just like
Yes.
making
Yes.
stuff.
See? And yeah, it was a pleasure for me as well, guys. I'm telling you, it's like I'm seeing my younger self because I was exactly in the game dev lab, your position. So it makes me really happy to talk to you. I want to wish you the very best with everything you do. And I'm sure a lot of you, I could tell from the vibes I got from you, it's going to happen for you. Just keep doing what you're doing. And yeah, wish you the best. And hopefully, maybe we'll talk again. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. All
we
right.
could definitely do some kind of follow-up. Thank you again,
All
seriously,
right.
so much for your time.
Likewise, guys. Likewise. Take care, guys.